Mountains, they are silent, they are harsh, and they are patient. In the south of Russia, beneath the Caucasus Mountains, there is a place called Dagestan. This is not an ordinary geography. It is a character in itself, a way of life that shapes its people, teaches discipline, and cleanses fear. It is on these lands, on September 20th, 1988, that a child is born. His name, Khabib Abdulmanapovich Nurmagomedov. He was not a legend at birth, but his life was destined to be anything but ordinary. Khabib's childhood did not pass on concrete streets, but in mountain villages surrounded by stone, snow, and cold. He had no toys, but he had wrestling, he had snow, and he had discipline. The most influential figure in his life was undoubtedly his father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, a father, but also a teacher, a mentor, and a master of discipline. For Abdulmanap, fighting was not merely a physical confrontation. Fighting meant patience, control, the discipline of the ego. Khabib understood this at a very young age. Before learning how to make others submit, he learned how to endure. They trained at home. They wrestled on carpets, controlling their breath between narrow walls. The cold was not an enemy. It was a teacher. Fatigue was not a limit, but the threshold itself. And Khabib crossed that threshold many times. Over time, wrestling evolved into sambo, judo, freestyle wrestling. Each one became a new language within his body. But Khabib was never the hardest hitter. He was the one who enjoyed the most. He broke his opponents not with a single movement, but with relentless, sustained pressure. His fighting style was not chaotic. It was structured, calculated, patient, inevitable. When he entered the UFC, most people didn't know who he was, but he didn't come to be known. He came to disrupt the order. Every time he stepped into the cage, the same scenario unfolded. The opponent started standing, continued on the ground, and eventually surrendered to helplessness. Khabib defeated his opponents not only physically, but mentally. He gave them no space to escape, no room to breathe. And most remarkably, he never rushed. For him, the fight was not an explosion, but a slowly rising wave. And that wave, in the end, consumed everything. As the years passed, records began to pile up. Victories, championship fights. But numbers were never what mattered to Khabib. What mattered was carrying his father's principles into the cage. Respect, discipline, quiet strength, cameras, flashes, applause. These did not belong to his world. He chose action over words. And after every fight, he left the cage with the same calm expression. Because victory, for him, was not something to shout about, but a duty fulfilled. Yet no legend is complete without being tested. And the greatest test of Khabib's life was waiting for him outside the cage. Growing up in Dagestan means maturing early. For Khabib, childhood was not a game. It was preparation. The silence of the mountains taught him patience. His father's strict but fair discipline shaped his character. At a young age, he stepped onto the wrestling mat. In cold training halls, he fell to the ground countless times. But he never stayed down, because he was taught one simple truth: strength is the will to rise. Years passed. That child stepped into the cage of the world's biggest MMA organization, the UFC. Now, he was no longer facing just opponents, but expectations. Khabib's prime was a quiet declaration of invincibility. He didn't just win fights. He erased his opponent's game plans. He applied pressure on the feet, sealed all exits on the ground, and never stopped until mental submission was complete. The fight against Conor McGregor was the most visible moment of that peak. But for Khabib, it was not a spectacle. It was the natural outcome of a discipline forged since childhood. He remained calm in the cage. He never strayed from the plan, and in the end, he emerged victorious. When he reached the summit, his record was perfect. 29 fights, 29 wins. But for him, the greatest achievement was not the championship belt. It was remaining loyal to his father's teachings. 10. Because the story of Khabib Nurmagomedov is not only the story of a champion, but of a child raised in the mountains, who quietly left his mark on the world. If you've watched this far, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Lots of love.